Welcome back to the Viking Central podcast. I'm Brett. I'm here with my guest today, Adam Farag. How we doing, Adam?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Every day that it gets closer to the NFL draft, I get a little bit more excited. So I'm feeling pretty good right now. Next week, the weekend's coming up, which is nice, but then next week's officially draft week, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited. I mean, this time of the year, that dead area between February and the draft, where it's just going over combine results, watching hours of film, all that kind of
Yep.
stuff, just building up to it. I mean, so nice that it's just about finally here.
I know. I'm feeling the same way, and I didn't notice this. You've been in here for a couple minutes before I press record. I didn't even notice the fat head behind you. I
Right?
absolutely love
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was thinking about going home and just doing it from my living room. I'm like, I better
Sure.
better stay in the office so that I can show off the old Kirky fat head.
Oh heck yes, I love it. I love it. All right, with the draft coming up, obviously the Vikings they have a lot of areas that they need to get better in, especially on the defense side of the football. In your opinion, what do you think is the biggest weakness in their defense? How do you think we can address it? Through the draft or maybe through free agency a little bit more. What's kind of the biggest weakness that you see in this Vikings defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me and probably, a lot of people right now, it's definitely the cornerback situation between.
Sure.
I mean, I know that losing Patrick Peterson might not have been, a ton as far as on the field wise with him getting up there in age, but and then also losing, with Duke Shelley and then releasing Dantzler, that we really kind of are going into a rebuilding mode at that position. I think.
Sure.
Obviously with a Caleb and Andrew Booth coming back next year. I mean, there's a lot of potential in that spot, and then obviously with Byron Murphy, that's probably the most excited I am to watch a new player this year. I think he's going to really excel in that system. But yeah, I think in the draft, there's a good handful, I think, of really talented cornerback prospects. Obviously, you have some of the top guys. I mean, my number one, and it's kind of up in the air between him and Witherspoon, but Christian Gonzalez, I think, is, I mean, just watching the film is probably the most fundamentally sound corner that I've seen coming out of college.
For sure.
I mean, the way that he, his technique off the line, the way he just mirrors receivers step for step, and then his ball skills. I think he is. I think he's probably going to end up going, top 10, top 15, but
Sure.
I mean, he's someone that, I think even looking at that high of a draft projection still is probably a little undervalued for what he can potentially bring to a team. I'm just in love with him, but he won't help the Vikings because we will not go up to get him, I don't think. But I think at 23, probably the most reasonable option that we'll have will be Deontay Banks. He's someone that I think he's kind of is a Brian Flores prototype almost, with his aggressiveness and physicality and just raw athleticism and speed. I do think that he could, stand to work on some technique and fundamentals a little bit more. He does tend to get sometimes a little over aggressive, but again, I think that having that kind of guy where you have to kind of reel him in instead of trying to fire up someone to get him going. That's kind of a good side to be on with that. So I think
Yeah.
I think Banks will probably be there at 23.
Sure.
Otherwise, obviously Joey Porter Jr. is a great prospect. I think he will probably be off the board by then. But I think getting Banks at 23 will be a really good way to kind of start to address that issue that we've had for, I mean, how many years. But then, if we can end up getting a good young corner, and then if, a Caleb and Booth play up to, what is expected of them, then we could, have a good young, just strong core of DBs. And then obviously with seeing that safety, and then you kind of have Harry as the old man at the wreck to try and reel them
Sure.
all in um,
Yep.
and put them on the right track. And obviously Harry can still play at a quality level too. But yeah,
Yep.
I think Deontay Banks is an amazing prospect. And then I'm also a huge fan of Brian Branch. I was looking through Twitter today, and I saw that you had put out a mock draft taking Branch
Yeah.
in the first round, and I mean, man, you want to talk about somebody that that would fit right in. I mean, the versatility. Some of the things he does on film kind of reminds me of Harry, where he has no problem coming down into the box. I mean, he'll blitz, not just off the edge, but between the guard and tackle, he'll really get into the mix of things. And even if he wouldn't, potentially start, at safety between Cine and Harry, he's always someone that, when we're in that nickel set, comes in that slot corner spot, because that's the kind of versatility he has. So for guys that I think are going to be available at 23, I think those two are probably the best as far as DBs go, which again I think is their biggest need defensively.
No, I agree with you, Adam. And thank you for bringing up Brian Branch, because I got roasted for that. Oh, they're going to take another safety back-to-back years. I'm like, Brian Branch is a darn good football player, and he would fit in that Brian Flores scheme like to a T. He can kind of play all over the place, like you said, a little bit comparable to Harrison Smith. Can play in the box, can play in the nickel, and then can play in the back end of the defense as well. He can pretty much be that Swiss Army knife type for that defense.
For sure.
But I really do like Deonte Banks as well. Out of Maryland, physical dude, like you said, 6'1", about 200 pounds, got plenty of meat on the bones. I mean, that dude can just play football. He's a football player. Not too handsy or anything like that. Cam Smith, a lot of people kind of like him. He was a little bit too handsy for me. Out of South Carolina, I think he drew like 10 penalties or so in college football last year. So Deonte Banks would be my pick, depending on how the board goes. If we are going to go in that cornerback direction, obviously I like Joey Porter Jr., but he's probably going to be gone in the teens, kind of like you were thinking as well.
Yeah,
because that dude's really, really good too, just a physical specimen as well. But another guy that I'd maybe look towards it, but he'd probably be more like a trade down. Say we trade to the back of the first round, early second. This guy's been getting a little bit of hype as a first rounder, but Julius Brents out of Kansas State, 6'4", just a super long, lengthy dude. I think has all the tools to be really, really good. So that's a guy I think that could really be good in this system as well. But people talk about Emmanuel Forbes. That guy's too small for me. I think Brian Flores would agree. You want some physical dudes that can play press. So I like what you're talking about with Deonte Banks and Brian Branch for sure.
Yeah, and then I think kind of going off of that too, I've seen some things about, and this would also be like a trade down type scenario about possibly looking at Keely Ringo out of Georgia. He's kind of the same thing that we had talked about with Cam Smith, where he's pretty overtly handsy. Even watching, whether it's overall film or even just highlights, you see just the amount of hand play that goes on. I don't think that will fly quite as much at the NFL level.
Sure.
He had 9 penalties this last year, and I mean that's just you kind of see it on film of how he just obviously you love a physical player, and I know that's Flores' scheme, but yeah, he's not someone that I think would be a great fit, especially for a team that is already kind of prone to shooting themselves in the foot with penalties.
For sure. Yep. No, I love that point. I agree with you 100%. And this guy's a football coach, so he knows what he's talking about when it comes to football players and evaluating. So I absolutely love your point of view, Adam. And I know you and I know you talked about how you loved Christian Gonzalez. I love Christian Gonzalez as well. Devin Witherspoon. Those are the 2 top cornerbacks in the draft. I think that's pretty set in stone.
Sure.
But other than that, is there any other really true draft crush that you kind of have in this 2023 draft?
Yeah, and then I mean it's someone that we would never be able to get, but ever since last year, Will Anderson is I think that this word kind of gets used a lot, but I think he's truly a generational kind of guy. Watching last year, it's like, man, it sucks that he has to play another year because he's already ready for the NFL. And he just to be able to move the way he does at his size. I mean, his flexibility, like he's not one of these, stiff, strong guys. He is, he can bend, he can move, he
Sure.
flies around. I mean, he can play, he can play DN, he can play outside backer. He's more so the kind of guy that I imagined in a 3-4 Donatel scheme versus Za'Darius. You know what I mean? And obviously, I
Sure.
love Za'Darius, but
Yep.
that's more so the kind of guy you look for in that kind of scheme. And obviously, we're in a different defense this year, but I think, and I also, I played D line in high school. I played it in college, so that's always where I'm going to have preference to. But
Sure.
man, he is an unreal prospect. I think from day one, he is going to be just a game changer. I
Yeah.
think that, I mean, he's my favorite for defensive rookie of the year. The draft hasn't happened. I think that, yeah,
Sure.
he's gonna be a menace. He is going to be a problem for every offensive line that he plays, and I am very excited to watch it, no matter where he goes, which will probably
Yeah.
be number 2. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
it could be number 2, which would be interesting if the Texans don't take a quarterback there. I mean, I wouldn't blame them if they're not in love with anyone except really Bryce Young, and Bryce Young obviously probably gets taken number 1 overall with Carolina. I wouldn't pass up Will Anderson, like you said. I would just go ahead and take him at number 2, and then they have pick 12 again, and they can maneuver if they need to, or wait at pick number 12 to get their quarterback. But yeah, he's a generational type talent for sure. Just absolute monster in the run game, pass rushing game. Whatever you ask him to do, he's going to do it at a high level. And then
Mhm.
you brought up his motor too. That guy he goes to work, which you love out of the defensive line. So for
Yeah,
sure.
he's a hard hat kind of guy. Bring your lunch pail. That's him.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anyone else that you're kind of looking at that you really have a draft crush on that you're like, if the Vikings could somehow get this guy, I would be over the mountain with with joy.
So this one, it might be kind of like I don't know how to put it type pick, but this wouldn't be a trade up. This would be, if he would fall to us at our third round pick, or if we hypothetically got in the middle of the second round or late second round.
Sure.
He's probably more of a day 3 kind of guy. But if we don't take a receiver at 23, I know there's issues with his size, but I love Tank Dell.
Awesome.
He's kind of he's not necessarily a one of a kind, because we've seen smaller receivers before, but you know
Yeah.
I I think that the whole issue of his draft stock falling because he's only 5'8", I don't think that carries as much weight as it should, or I think it carries more weight than it should,
Sure.
because at the end of the day, he's when it comes to pure route running, he's probably the best route runner in the draft, and it might not even be that close.
Sure.
Because obviously when you're a little bit smaller, you are so much shiftier, and can shake those 6', 6'1" corners. But he's someone that I think can be used in such a variety of ways. Hypothetically, if he's used in a Debo Samuel type role, but maybe not as much this year as past years of Debo Samuel, where no matter how you have to get him the ball in space, do that and watch him make guys miss.
Sure.
His speed, his shiftiness. I was a little surprised that his 40 time wasn't a little bit better. I think it was
Okay.
4.48, 4.49, somewhere in that range. I thought he'd be a sub 4 guy, or a sub 4.4 kind of guy, just because of how he looks on film. But
Sure.
yeah, he's someone where if it's third round and we haven't taken a receiver, I absolutely love him. Even if just
Love it.
throw him in the slot. If we feel confident enough putting KJ on the outside, opposite of JJ, and then you
Yeah.
have someone that's as dynamic as Tank Dell. I mean, he's someone that I love. I think that again, the size thing, it is what it is. I also don't think Tyreek Hill is 5'10". I think that's
No, I don't think so either.
a little bit of stat padding.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he was 5'8" at the combine, and you don't grow 2 inches once you're
No.
24 plus. So I think that's kind of how I see him. People aren't worried about Tyreek being too small because he's a top 3 receiver in the league.
Sure.
So the potential is there, and I don't think it would, it wouldn't have to be a big risk to go get him, because you're not going to have to trade up at all to get him, unless, like I said, you're third round or late second and you want to move up a few spots. But yeah,
Sure.
I love Tank. He's He's a fun guy, and I think he's going to be a damn good receiver.
Yeah, I love that pick. I'm glad you mentioned him because I think he's really good as well. And there's a good chance he'd be there at pick number 87, and I'd have no problem, depending on what they do in the first round, obviously. Go get and Tank Dell. Obviously not an outside receiver. He would be more in the slot, which I won't have a problem with. I know people have talked about maybe the Vikings going to more of a 12 personnel with TJ Hawkinson or Josh Oliver kind of filling that slot. But wouldn't it be so like offsetting for defenses? Excuse me, for the defense. You're guarding TJ or Josh Oliver one possession or one play, and then all of a sudden you put Tank Dell in that spot. Like it's
It's a
way different.
nightmare.
It is a personnel nightmare. Exactly. Thank you for thank you for that. That's exactly what I was trying to get at. Personnel nightmare, because that guy's so shifty, works great in small spaces. That guy would take advantages of if it's a linebacker on you, a safety on you. That dude's gonna win. And obviously, like you said, he didn't run a great 40, but his tape is out of this world.
Unreal.
The dude is unreal, like you said. And his stats at Houston, like, amazing. Obviously, the stats, the tape, just himself. That it speaks for him for itself. The dude's a baller. So I would love that. To be honest with you, I would absolutely love it. Now that you're kind of talking about, you wouldn't have to really trade back for this guy. He'd probably be sitting at 87, maybe. You'd maybe have to trade up a little bit, but put your GM shoes on. You're sitting at pick number 23. You thinking you're going to stay put, trade up, trade back? I know it kind of depends on how the board falls right away if you're going to trade up, but what would you do? Would you be looking to trade up for a player, stay put, or maybe trade back and gain more compensation?
Yeah, it's really a tough decision, I think. Obviously there's all the talk about, because and we haven't mentioned it yet, and I'm sure we'll get into it here, but obviously the biggest conversation is, do the Vikings go quarterback round one? And as you can tell by this guy behind me, I'm not a huge fan of going quarterback round one. And I think part of that is, or a big part of that is, the options that I think will be there at 23 or later on. Me personally, I think that if somebody like I'm blanking on his name. We're just talking about it. There we go. Christian Gonzalez. If somebody like Christian Gonzalez falls out of the top 10 or even the top 15, then I'm trading up to get him. Obviously, as far as capital, you're never sure what it's going to cost, how many picks, or what players, and then obviously if you can somehow sneak Dalvin into a package, that is ideal, right? But for someone like him, if it gets to that point, then absolutely trade up. I think the strategy going in, for me personally, is kind of to stay put. I think that you're going to have a good array of options to choose from for 23. I think that if they decide not to go corner, and if say Deontay Banks and Porter are both off the board, and they decide that corner's not the route they want to go, then I also really like Jordan Addison at 23, and he's someone I saw you mentioned it in an earlier video that he's someone you might be able to trade back a little bit for. If obviously depending on what receivers go ahead of him, obviously if we can get him or Zay Flowers at that spot, because I'm sure at least one of them, if not both of them, will be available at that spot. It may just be one of them, but obviously I think either of them are great fits for the team. Quentin Johnson is a guy that I'm not in love with at that spot. He's kind of he's kind of different from the rest of the receivers in the draft. I think he kind of has that more so DK Metcalf type play style where he's not the crispiest route runner. He doesn't have the best release in the world, but he's 6'4" and a hell of an athlete, and you can just throw it to him and he'll get the ball. Me, I'm a technician kind of guy, but obviously never going to turn down that type of athlete. But just going back to the original one, me personally, if I'm Kwesi, I'm sitting at 23, unless one of those guys that I had for sure top 10, top 15 falls outside of that, then I'm going to make a move to go up and get a guy that I really want, because that's the thing
Sure.
about Quessy. I think that I don't think that he'll reach for a guy that he's not in love with, and that
Agreed.
I think is a great approach to it. Don't take a guy just because you feel obligated that you need that position.
Sure.
And that's where I think he'll be great. But I think the mindset, like I said, is just sit at 23. That's the game plan. But if somebody falls that you didn't expect to, that's where you jump. That's where you can jump ahead and get one of those guys. Otherwise, and I know I'm just throwing out 80 different options,
No,
but
I love it. I love it.
I think that if they totally switch it up and they don't go receiver or corner and they go to what's probably the next biggest need or one of the next biggest needs, and they want to go interior line, that's where I think you have some move to or some room to maneuver back, and potentially gain a little bit of capital that way. Um, if you get Alex or not Alex, Steve Avila from TCU, a guy who is incredibly versatile. He's played pretty much
Sure.
every spot on the O line, taking snaps everywhere. You get a John Michael Schmitz, a Minnesota guy who, yes, he's played only center, but the way he moves, I don't think he would struggle to transition to guard.
Oh, I don't
Because
think so.
I don't think we want to see Bradbury try to move over. Um, but but yeah, I think they have a ton of options, and I think that they'll end up doing hopefully the right thing. If they go D tackle at 23, I might start graying a little bit earlier than I thought I would on my head. But yeah, there's gonna be a ton of good
Love it.
prospects. I think a lot of positions that need to be filled, and I think they'll have a pretty decent crap to pick from at 23 at really any of their biggest need positions.
Sure. Yeah, I think they're definitely looking secondary or wide receiver. If they stay put or if they trade back, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of what they're probably going to be looking at, unless they're in love with one of these quarterbacks, which I'm not sold on that they are.
No.
I mean, if like Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud for some reason fall way down the board, I could see it maybe. And then depending on what they think of Hendon Hooker, I think that whole talk's kind of been smoke screeny
Yeah.
from the beginning. I think he's a second or third round selection. So depending on how far they trade back, I think that's kind of off the board too. But I think you're right. They're going to have a good selection of guys because the cornerback class is really deep. A lot of good guys, top to bottom, in that class, the cornerback class. So they're going to have options. If there's a couple on the board that they like at 23, maybe I could see them trading back, but say it's only Deontay Banks on the board, not Joey Porter Jr. and Deontay Banks or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably going to take Deontay Banks straight at 23, just in case they don't want to miss him if they do end up trading back. But Jordan Addison's another guy I could see them going after for wide receiver. Quentin Johnston, I think the NFL realized he's falling. He didn't even get invited to the draft, so I could see him as a day 2 pick, probably a second round pick. But Zay Flowers has been my draft crush for a long time. I would really love to see him in this offense. But I think Kansas City is going to make a pretty hard push for him. He worked out with Patrick Mahomes and everything. I think they really like Zay Flowers. So I think Jordan Addison could be the guy for wide receiver if they do go that direction in round 1.
Mm-hmm.
He pre-visit with the Vikings and everything. I think he kind of reminds me of Adam Thielen a little bit, to be honest with you. Really good route runner, really good at intermediate game. I think he'd slide in and be a day 1 contributor. But I could see them sitting at 23 or trading back. That's what my money's on right now, for the Vikings to do next Thursday anyway. So
You think that with obviously receiver being one of the biggest conversations for round 1 for them, do you think that that they draft somebody that ends up falling into the number 3 spot and KJ gets that bump up to the number 2, or are they just going to end up sitting with or with KJ at the number 3 at the number 3, and then going forward, what kind of impact do you think that'll end up having on on KJ? Is he going to be somewhere where he thinks that, well, they only see me as a number 3 guy, and then I
sure,
can go somewhere and be number 2? It's almost like Adam Thielen wanting some more more opportunity, and that's why he went
sure.
elsewhere. Do you think that that contributes at all to the Vikings selection at receiver there? Do you think that he kind of realizes that I can produce as a number 3, so that's what I'm going to be comfortable doing?
Sure. I think KJ is like a really hardworking dude. I think he's going to be happy with that with whatever role he's in. Um, but I think he is expecting to be wide receiver too. We all saw his press conference the other day. Like he's ready to take on that role, be the number 2 guy, and that's the way he works. Obviously, he works like he's the number 1 guy. That's what all these professionals do. They work their butts off. And I think is he a free agent after this year already? He might be a free agent after this year or the next year, one of the two.
I don't remember
But
for sure, but it's coming up soon.
yeah, yeah. But if a rookie comes in, I don't know if he's going to be handed the keys to wide receiver number 2 right away. Say Jordan Addison does come in and KJ just has a great offseason. I don't think they're going to be in any hurry to just put this rookie into the number 2 spot. Um, they're going to have to earn it because KJ is a damn good wide receiver. We haven't seen him take those full wide or 2 responsibilities yet, and I'm excited to see it if he does get the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got like Jalen Naylor out of Michigan State from last year. I think he has a good opportunity to contribute this year. A speedster. I know it was garbage time last year, but the dude made some plays at the end of some games last year. So I'm excited to see that. But I think they're going to bring in a rookie. It all really depends on the off seasons for KJ and that rookie to see who really supplants the wide receiver 2. But I know they want KJ to be confident in himself. So I think it's his job right now until someone comes in and takes it or he loses it himself. But I think that competition, only does wonders for especially a wide receiver group. You want competition
For
in
sure.
the wide receiver room. So yeah,
And then
sure.
because I mean, even draft wise is, obviously there's all these projections, and we can do as many mock drafts as we want, but for all we know, starting at pick 14, there could be an eight pick receiver run, and then all of a sudden, Quentin Johnston's the best guy on the board at 23. I think
Right.
that honestly that is a possibility just with the success of first round receivers the last 4 or 5 years. You look at all the guys that have gone maybe a little bit earlier than than some have expected, but I mean,
Sure.
there's been so many hits the last few years. I mean, you just think back to from JJ, Jamar, Chris Olave, just all these other guys that have made such quick impacts. Christian Watson, I guess he was as quick, but it only took him nine or 10 games.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see because there's always going to be a big run at that position, and hopefully it starts later rather than sooner.
It's like one of the premier positions in the NFL now. You just got like quarterback, edge rusher, wide receiver, and they're getting paid like it now, obviously too. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a run on wide receivers. And I don't think they're going to reach for one either. Say Quentin Johnston's the only one on the board. I don't think they're super in need of a wide receiver. I just see him trading back at that point if they are looking for a wide receiver. And then like your guy Tank Dell, he'd probably be there later on if you do want to trade up for him, or that could be a trade back solution. Or if he's there at 87. You got guys like Michael Wilson, A.T. Perry that I think are going to be pretty good wide receivers, even from day one. This isn't like an over the top, super uber talented wide receiver class, but it is pretty deep. You're going to get some contributors at least. I think Jackson Smith and Najigba is obviously the number 1 guy in the draft class. Dude's just amazing. If there's somehow he fell to 23, I don't think it's going to happen. That would be my selection. Him and Justin Jefferson would be unfair. But that probably won't happen. But yeah, obviously, I think they are going to get a wide receiver. It's going to be interesting to see where they prioritize that at, if it is for round 1 or if it's maybe in the mid rounds. But I think it's going to be one of those selections for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anything else you have, Adam?
No, I honestly, I just have been looking forward to this. Obviously, we just scheduled a couple of days ago, but I've been looking forward to this. I love talking Vikings. They're the team that it kills you to love them, but you just can't stay away. And
they keep you loyal for sure.
For sure, yeah. I just I just appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, I just was looking forward to it all day, and it was awesome.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you, and we'll get you on again. Maybe around a little closer to the draft, or maybe after the draft, we can talk a little bit more if that works for you, Adam.
For sure, yeah. I'm pretty open. Football season doesn't start for us till till summer stuff gets going. So
sure,
2 days are nice and short. So
awesome. Where can we follow you on Twitter or any other social media?
Yeah, so Twitter is just at Farag Adam, my name reversed, and
Perfect.
that's pretty much my main source. I don't tweet a ton, but I get my likes out there and my retweets.
Sure.
You'll see a lot of
Awesome.
a lot of promotion of Wyndham football players, through there.
Cool.
So
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, Adam, I appreciate your time, man. Draft time's coming up. We're all having fun. I appreciate you joining the episode today.
absolutely, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Yeah, you take care.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks again.